care experts, and everybody who could provide any type of meaningful information that would shape our thought process as legislators about how best to respond to this tragic shooting. The discussions that took place in this room, they led to further discussions outside of this room. They led to the development of policy points. They led to hearings by legislators. They led to proposed bills that led to debates that led to the passage of bills that have now led to laws in the state of Texas to address not only the tragedy that took place in Santa Fe, but also laws that will do more than Texas has ever done to make our schools safer places for our students, for our educators, for our parents and the families that go in and out of those schools. Today we have laws that will make Texas better. The first one that I will sign is Senate Bill 11. This is a comprehensive bill that heightens school safety emergency response standards and bolsters mental health support in our schools. It does a lot of things. I want to outline some of them. It improves the quality of the safety and security audits that schools must submit to the School Safety Center. It establishes threat assessment teams in each school. It establishes higher standards for school facilities. It increases school employee communication and collaboration with law enforcement. It establishes the Texas Child Mental Health Care Consortium. This consortium will use health-related institutions of higher education to provide mental health services to children all across the state of Texas. This legislation comes with a very meaningful addition of funds from the state of Texas. It includes $110 million to be added biennially, and then in addition to that, it provides an immediate injection of $100 million for hardening of our schools. There are 3 legislators with us here today who contributed very profoundly to the shaping and passage of these bills. They include Senator Larry Taylor, who represents the district where Santa Fe High School is located, as well as Representative Greg Bonin, who also represents the district where Santa Fe High School is located, and includes Senator Jane Nelson for a fabulous contribution to this. Thank you all. I can't see what is today.
Today is the 6th.
Senate Bill 11, Making Schools Safer, is now law in the state of Texas. Additionally, I'll be signing House Bill 18. You know, one of the most significant things we can do to keep our students safe is to improve the way that we approach mental health issues in our schools. I mentioned earlier that we had 3 days of roundtables in this room in the aftermath of the shooting. We heard so many great ideas about ways and strategies that we can use to make our schools safer. The most common strategy that was mentioned by every different type of participant was for the state to do more to help our students in schools address mental health challenges that students are dealing with. It would be good in general for those students, but also it would be very helpful to reduce the type of behavior that could lead to a student, like what happened in Santa Fe, go into a school and shoot fellow students. What House Bill 18 does, it increases mental health training for educators and other school professionals to aid in the early identification and intervention of any mental health needs. It emphasizes the importance of mental health education for students in our schools, and it improves students' access to mental and behavioral health services through school-based mental health centers and the hiring of mental health professionals. One thing I want to point out, because some people have raised concerns about this, we want to make sure that none of this takes place without the collaboration and participation in informed decision-making by parents. And so the legislation explicitly requires parental consent before school-based health care. And I want to thank Representative Floor Price for his leadership and Senator Kirk Watson for his leadership getting this across the finish line and to my desk. Pass it on to him. Thank you, guys. House Bill 18, improving mental health for students in schools, is now law in the state of Texas.
It's an easy day.
You guys had a busy session. The last one I'll be signing today is House Bill 1387. You know, it is, I don't see any of the primary authors here, but House Bill 1387, it is vital that we have trained professionals that can respond to violent threats in our schools. In some cases, that means having trained school marshals. Currently, there is an arbitrary cap on how many marshals a school can employ. House Bill 1387 fixes that problem. It removes the cap on the number of marshals a school district can employ per campus. It empowers school districts for themselves to decide how many school marshals are necessary to better protect their students. The lead sponsors for this include Representative Cole Hefner and Senator Brandon Creighton. Law increasing school marshals in school is now law in the state of Texas. Now, this time we're going to have the senators and representatives with us here today share their comments about this, and we will start out with Senator Larry Taylor, who, as I mentioned earlier, represents the district where Santa Fe High School is located.
Well, thank you, Governor, and thank you for signing these bills, and thank you for all the members for all the work you put into these bills. Yeah, this is a bittersweet day. The fact that we have to do these things and to do this, you know, since the terrible event happened at Santa Fe, we have been working diligently since then through the governor's roundtables, through a select committee that the lieutenant governor put together. Spent a lot of time going through trying to figure out what we needed to do from the state level to help our local districts deal with the day we live in today. This is unheard of. So we did do things like allow hardening of existing facilities because these schools were not designed for the type of situations we're dealing with. But we've also put in some funding to help them with the ongoing costs of more counselors, more school resource officers, more those ongoing type expenses. And I do want to acknowledge today that we do have the Superintendent of Schools from Santa Fe, Lee Wall is here, and the President of the School Board, Rusty, is here as well. Rusty Norman, thank you all very much for being here. You know, from that terrible day, these folks have been on the front lines of dealing with something that's unheard of. But they have done a magnificent job of handling the load of having such a burden brought upon their community by an unknown evil. That's all you can describe it as. But what we're here to do today is everything we reasonably can to make sure this does not repeat itself in other Texas school campuses. And I appreciate everyone's efforts to make sure that happens to the best of our abilities. Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now the state representative who also represents the district where Santa Fe High School is located, Representative Greg Lyon.
Thank you, Governor, very much. And it is unfortunate that events such as what happened in Santa Fe would occur, but we are taking action to do everything that we can reasonably do to see that no one has to go through the tragedy that occurred. What this legislation will do is it'll put into place structure and organization within our schools to make them safer. It also creates accountability, which I know is very important to parents and to teachers and to people in communities, especially back home in Santa Fe. And we also provide a funding structure to provide resources for that infrastructure hardening and for marshals, school resource officers, and counselors. There are no words that will take away the pain or the suffering or the terrible loss which has been suffered. But I do want everyone to know that for those who did experience such tremendous grief and such loss, and in that time of suffering, that their loved ones are remembered, that they're cherished, and that they're loved, and that what they went through has not happened in vain, and that in their memory we are taking tangible, concrete steps to see that no one has to go through, as best we can prevent it, what they went through. And Governor, thank you. Senator Taylor, thank you. And to all of my colleagues and all the people back home in Santa Fe, we could not have done this alone. This was a team effort. And thanks to all of you.
Thank you. And now to one of the architects of the mental health components of this, Senator Jane Nelson.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Governor, for your leadership and the legislators sitting around this table. When Santa Fe occurred, immediately my mind went to the mental health aspect of this, the whole school safety discussion. In fact, a reporter, I was here at the Capitol, and a reporter caught me in the hall not long after that and asked me if I thought mental health was also a component of school safety. Of course it is. And so I got to work gathering people in the mental health profession. We talked to, obviously, superintendents of our schools, we talked to teachers, we talked to counselors, we talked to people in the mental health profession, met with judges and law enforcement to see what holes we needed to fill and what we could do to, as a society, address this problem. And a couple of things emerged. First of all, especially in our rural parts of our state, we do not have good access to psychiatrists. We have some world-class institutions in this state that we, in fact, have our GME money going to support those psychiatric students, and we are going to use telemedicine to give access to every student whose pediatrician and parents believe need proper attention. And we created a Texas Child Mental Health Consortium that's going to be addressing our mental health needs for our students. I can't imagine the horror of losing a child. And I heard from so many teachers and parents and pediatricians that they just didn't know where to go. They needed more than what was available to them. And this bill, I think, will help us address that. So thank you, Governor. Thank you, everybody here in the legislature. It's very, very important that we allow access to good mental health treatment for all of our students.
Thank you for your leadership.
you.
And on the House side, helping to lead the effort to respond to the mental health challenges is Representative Ford Price.
Thank you, Governor. I appreciate your leadership, not only on this issue, but on related issues throughout the entire session and before the session started during the last interim. As you mentioned, we had roundtables in this room that addressed this topic. And the thing I want to emphasize about House Bill 18 is that it is not just a bill that is reactive to that one scenario, although it is very complementary and very supportive and works very well with the objectives of Senate Bill 11 and other related bills that are improving school safety. And mental health is a very important component of that. So this really is the result of a lot of hard work, not just from 4 years ago when the Select Committee on Mental Health was formed in the House, and that effort was really started in earnest to determine what we could do and what we could accomplish, and positive steps were taken in the 85th session. And then this session with House Bill 18 and bills like it, we are taking a very significant step forward in providing enhanced training for our educators and administrators. We're taking a positive step forward with creating better awareness, reducing the stigma that is associated with mental health and mental illness. And we are equipping our counselors and our administrators and our educators throughout the state of Texas to identify early, at the earliest stages, children in crisis or children that have needs, again, all with parental consent, in an environment that is structured and safe. And hopefully, and the goal will be that we will create an environment where students are not only helping themselves and safer, but it prevents them from escalating or progressing to a stage where they might harm themselves or someone else. So I think it's a very important step forward. I want to thank Senator Kirk Watson for sponsoring that bill in the Senate. Everybody around this table was instrumental in seeing its passage. Representative Bonin was a joint author of that bill. I also want to thank Commissioner Mike Morath for providing insight and guidance and TEA's cooperation with the development of this bill. And again, I just want to emphasize how many hundreds of hours our staff put in developing this bill and working with stakeholders across the state. And Governor, your office was instrumental in helping us, and your leadership on this issue is greatly appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now let's hear from Senators Watson and West.
I'll be brief. I think as it applies to House Bill 18, Chairman Price laid it out pretty well. But I do want to say thank you to the governor. I want to say thank you to Chairwoman Nelson and everybody at this table because of the focus that's now been created in the area of brain health. The chairman talked about the work that started 4 years ago, and we're carrying that through. And that's because of leadership on these kinds of issues. So I think it will make a difference. I agree with Chairman Taylor. Today's a bittersweet day. But when we think about what the future is going to be, legislation like SB 11, HB 18, those bills are going to make a difference in people's lives down the road so that any of the victims of this horrific occurrence won't have died in vain. So thank you all.
Thank you. Senator West.
I concur with my colleagues at the table. Governor, thank you for your leadership on this, bringing both Republicans and Democrats together to recognize that this is a Texas issue, and we've come together. We know that the common denominator amongst all of these horrific crimes is mental health. And by making certain that we put in place the advisory committee, the committee comprised of our universities, and making certain that one of the core charges of our universities will be to deal with issues of mental health and come up with some best practices to reduce this, the chances of this happening again is very important. And we need to make certain that they understand the importance of what that mission is, we provide them the resources, and not only do we expect results, that we want results for this, because it's not just our schools that this is happening in, unfortunately. It's happening in all of our institutions, and we in Texas need to get ahead of it and provide some best practices, not only for Texas, but the rest of the country.
Thank you, Senator. And now Representative Zerwas.
Thank you. Thank you, Governor. Yes, it's a tongue twister at times. Thank you. It's been a privilege for me to work with your office and all my colleagues around the table here, in particular Senator Nelson with regard to the budget, but also regard to SB 10, which became a part of SB 11, which is a very, very comfortable and place for it to be, because it's really focused all about school safety. And so it's good to be part of this and know that this is something that's going to be really transformational, I think, with regard to school safety and the things that have come on the heels of this horrific incident. But as you know, I spent a good bit of my time with Senator Nelson hammering out a budget, and I've had the privilege to do this 2 sessions now as the chair and multiple sessions as part of the budget-making process since 2007. And as we have heard many times, if you open the checkbook of anybody, any state, any company, you'll have a very clear sense of what its moral compass is. And if you open this budget this time, you will see sprinkled throughout it millions upon millions, if not billions of dollars dedicated to mental health. This time, there is a clear focus on those monies being expended in a way in our public schools so that we can make those safer, make those an environment that our students continue to feel safe in, which has been threatened as a consequence of recent incidences and stuff. But, Governor, I think you can be very proud, as every person around this table can be very proud, if you open our checkbook and look at where we are sprinkling millions upon millions of dollars to address, yes, some school hardening issues, some things like that, but certainly the mental health monies that are in there are very profound, and I think that they are going to speak greatly to what we are doing in terms of not just passing laws, but also putting money in there to see these laws become reality. Thank you for your leadership in that. You and your staff have been incredibly helpful in that. The Lieutenant Governor's staff, the Speaker's staff similarly has been very, very helpful in that, and we just appreciate your efforts at a time where there is great prosperity in the state of Texas. And how we spend those dollars, I think, is a very, very clear indication of our moral compass, and you have set that compass in a very, very positive way. So thank you for that.
And we are very proud of all you did. Thank you. Representative Metcalf.
Thank you, Governor. Well, I remember the tragedy that happened in Santa Fe, and that evening I reached out to Senator Taylor and Representative Greg Bonin, and, you know, just reflecting on my children. I have twins, and they're going into 2nd grade now, and just reflecting upon, you know, that could be me, and, you know, that could be my constituents as well. And that evening, Dr. Bonin and I discussed, you know, what are we going to do? And it's so sad that, you know, this bill came out of tragedy, but it's also positive that we were able to work together with our colleagues in the House and in the Senate and the Governor's office to come up with this great language. So I just want to thank our colleagues in the House, our Speaker, our colleagues in the Senate, Lieutenant Governor, and the Governor for all your leadership and making the best that could come out of this tragedy. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And it's clear that what has happened today is the result of a team effort by both the House and the Senate, but also a compassionate effort to try to do everything we can to make schools safer. With that, we'll be happy to take a few questions.
Governor, when it comes to school counselors, can the members of the governor speak a little bit about what we've done to give counselors more time, or if not, why that wasn't part of the equation in these bills?
Sure.
More time to be with kids and to address issues.
Right. I'll be happy to let the members provide the response to that.
Well, there's 2 types of counseling on the school campus. There's academic counseling, which is our traditional. It does a little bit of mental health, but we're really trying to get more mental health type counselors on campuses or available, either by telemedicine in some of our rural areas. And those. So it's really more towards the emotional type counseling versus the typical academic counseling. Although we do have academic counselors do some counseling, but we need to get more of an emphasis and free up more time. So that's where you see some of the additional dollars allowing school districts to allow to pay more folks doing the emotional type things. And working we have all different ways of doing this. We're working in groups, consortiums with our university partners. So it's not just having a counselor on a campus, but just a whole plethora of things coming forth to bear on this, unfortunately, a growing problem in our society today is the need for more counseling. So that's really what we're talking about. Academic counseling, we have issues every session trying to make sure they get time to do what they need to do outside their duties that they keep being given, like test proctors and that type of thing. And I think we made some progress on that, but to be honest with you, it's too soon after session to know where that ended up. I know we worked on that. So.
You bet, Governor, and thank you. I'll just add, I think all these bills work together, not only just the ones we've discussed today, but several others that have passed, to really define the lanes which the chairman was talking about with regard to counseling, so that we don't rely on our counselors to do everything. We don't rely on them to assist with testing and also provide academic counseling and then be emotional or mental health resources for the kids that may need that. What we're trying to do is divide or really determine some clear lanes of authority by providing support and resources and training through not just the bills that we've passed and discussed here today, but others. And so while it would be probably and the Chairman Zerwas and Chairman Nelson would know the numbers on this better, but why it may be impractical from a financial standpoint to just hire and place more counselors in every single school district on every single campus, which I think that would be true. What we're doing is through telemedicine and through training and through support and through the bills that we've talked about today, we are going to provide better lanes for our counselors so that they're not called upon to do everything, that they are actually providing the help that the children need when they need it. And the academic side will stay on the academic side, and the health side will stay on the health side. And I think that these bills working in concert with one another will provide that support.
And Senator Watson wants to say something.
I'll just, a couple things real quick. One is HB 18, which Chairman Price carried in the House and talked very eloquently about a minute ago. Part of what that does is it provides training so that you have others capable of being aware of what's going on with children and recognizing issues that they may need to recognize earlier in the process, so that recommendations can be made so that it's not all a burden of just some sort of some counselor. In addition, and I'm not going to remember the bill number, but it was Chairman Price's House bill that allows for an MOU to be entered into between our education resource centers and local mental health agencies.
HB 19.
There you go. So yeah, it's too soon after the session for me to be able to remember all the bill numbers too. But yeah, HB 19, which I carried in the Senate and Chairman Price carried in the House, that the purpose behind that as well is to create more opportunity for resources to be available to those students. And so that sets up a mechanism in law for the resource centers, the education resource centers, to work directly with local mental health agencies.
Well, and I would just add, too, that one of the roles of the consortium that we have created is to provide information to all of our school districts, all of our judicial, I talked to a lot of the juvenile justice people, court judges, who said they knew that a child had mental health problems, but they didn't know where to go, where to send them. And so one of the things the consortium will do is have a database, have a website that can be utilized that will show in every community the resources that are available in that community. We have wonderful resources that we're not tapping in many of our communities. People don't know where to go. Even talk to some pediatricians who knew, the parents knew, and they didn't know. They didn't feel qualified to counsel this child and didn't know where to send them. So providing the resources, I think, will be very important. There are counselors right now in many of these communities, and for communities that don't have it, we'll use telemedicine.
Well, hold on, I wanted to elaborate on something, because I want y'all to see the vision of what this achieves, but also the vision of what Texas is advancing on multiple platforms. A component of what you were talking about is the access to appropriate mental health care experts through the process of telemedicine. That was a strategy that was already employed before we passed these laws through the telemedicine healthcare program at Texas Tech. Importantly, so you can see what's going on, we announced something like this 2 days ago when we were talking about what was going on with regard to sexual assault assessment through the Sexual Assault Nurse Examiner program, allowing them to provide input through telemedicine. You're going to see this in other strategies with regard to healthcare taking place in the state of Texas. Telemedicine is a way of leveraging technology to make sure that we can provide the best and brightest counselors or mental health care providers to schools in this situation, to students in this situation, or outside of the school setting through other strategies to make sure that everyone in the entire state of Texas is going to be able to better access health care, not by having a physical person right there with you, but through the process of telemedicine.
Rudy?
Governor, there are several groups that wanted to see more gun control in this package that the state lawmakers passed, the red flag law, talk about the laws in regards to improper storage of guns. Virginia's calling a special session to deal with things like that. Is it time to go, and is that the next step here in Texas, or are you satisfied with where we're at?
Well, it's one of the issues that was discussed at the roundtable in this room. It's one of the issues that was discussed in the legislature, in both the House and Senate, during the course of the session. Decisions were made, and that's where the current status is in the state of Texas right now on those issues.
Do you support red flag laws next time?
Right now, it's not necessary in the state of Texas. We think that the best approach is what we passed in the combination of these bills.
Two more questions, real quick.
Governor,
Adela?
yeah, on the bill that deals with school marshals, are we talking about SROs that are placed in the schools, or does this also include staff that have gone through the training and are armed in the schools?
Who wants to talk about the school marshal part?
Yeah, this is the marshals. This is we have school resource officers are paid normally. These are volunteers. We keep hearing about teachers being given guns. These are people, we're not just giving guns to anybody, and we're not making anyone take a gun. This is people who volunteer to frankly put their life on the line to do this for those kids. And they take extensive training. And what that particular bill was had a limit on how many marshals you could have per number of students. I think the number was 200. And we've made that where you could have actually more marshals than what that original bill had. So this was just ability, and not every district's going to do it. It's purely optional, but for those districts in their situation where it fits them best, they have the ability to do that and not have an artificial cap put on that to the way it was before.
Last question.
Governor, on tariffs, you've expressed concern about possible tariffs that might go into place on Monday. Just because they're still up in the air, do you think that would damage the economy of Texas? And what has your office done to convey your concerns to the administration in Washington?
Right. First, I want to be clear about a couple of things. I personally spoke with the Vice President before the tariff announcement was made. He gave me a call to let me know what was going on. He wanted my input, and I provided the input, which echoed exactly what my public statement was. I strongly support the President and the administration's efforts to do everything they can to better secure our border. We're dealing with thousands of people coming across the border now on a daily basis. What's happening on the border is completely out of control. And so all possible strategies must be considered when it comes to better controlling our border. That said, and this is exactly what I told the Vice President, and that is tariffs pose a problem in the state of Texas. Texas leads the nation in exports. Our trade with Mexico is prolific and will not be beneficial to the trade situation with Mexico. And so I urge the Vice President to have the administration work on strategies that will
better secure our border in ways that do not involve tariffs.
Businesses expressed concern to you about the tariffs, Texas businesses?
Yeah, they've expressed concerns to me. They've expressed concerns more broadly, but we'll see. You know, my hope is what most people's hope is, and that is that a deal will be struck. From public perception, it seems like Mexico is working very collaboratively and very aggressively to try to reach a deal with the United States to avoid the tariffs or to avoid the escalation of tariffs in a way that Mexico does more to prevent migrants from coming into the United States illegally.
Thanks, guys. We got to run. Appreciate it. Andrew, I'm so sorry. They're going to go around later to talk, but for right now, we got to go. Thank you.
You first.